Douglas Hargrove was known throughout Westbrook, Connecticut, as a man who had built everything from the ground up. At 58, he lived alone in a grand mansion surrounded by manicured gardens and tall gates that rarely opened for anyone who wasn't part of his business circle. His wife had passed away years earlier, and though he appeared composed in public, those close to him said the loss had left him quiet and distant. His days were filled with meetings, property inspections, and charity galas. To outsiders, Douglas's life seemed enviable: wealth, influence, and comfort, but inside his empty home, he carried the silence of a man who had forgotten what warmth felt like. That changed one evening at a charity dinner hosted by a local university. Among the servers was a young woman named Maya Linton, a 22-year-old journalism student with a sharp mind and a disarming smile. She was working part-time to pay her tuition and didn't know much about the man she was serving that night, but Douglas noticed her immediately. Something about her youth and curiosity drew him in. He asked her name, complimented her professionalism, and by the end of the event, found an excuse to speak with her again. That short exchange became the start of something that neither of them could have predicted would end in tragedy. Over the following weeks, Douglas and Maya began seeing each other privately. He was captivated by her enthusiasm, her dreams of becoming a reporter, and the way she made him feel alive again. Maya, on the other hand, was drawn to Douglas's wealth and confidence. He gave her gifts she'd never imagined owning: luxury handbags, diamond earrings, even a sleek new car. For a while, their secret affair was thrilling. But as it deepened, so did the tension. Douglas started to feel uneasy. He worried that if their relationship became public, it could ruin his reputation and affect his business partner's trust. He decided to end things quietly, offering Maya financial help so she could finish college comfortably. She refused, feeling insulted and discarded. To her, it wasn't just about the money, it was about control. She couldn't accept that the man who had once made her feel special was now treating her like a mistake to erase. What Douglas didn't know was that Maya had begun collecting evidence of their relationship. Photos, text messages, even short voice recordings, she saved everything. Friends later said she was obsessed, scrolling through his messages at all hours, convinced he would come back to her. But he didn't. 2 weeks after their last argument, Douglas was found dead in his study. His housekeeper discovered him lying near his desk, a deep wound on his head, his phone missing. The police were puzzled. There were no signs of forced entry, and the alarm system had been disarmed from inside. It seemed like whoever did it knew him well. The only clue left behind was a broken necklace clasp on the carpet, delicate, gold, and too small to belong to Douglas. When investigators examined it, they found traces of Maya Linton's DNA. That discovery would turn the quiet town of Westbrook into the center of a shocking investigation that no one could have imagined. The investigation into Douglas Hargrove's death began quietly but soon captured national attention. Detectives from the Connecticut State Police combed through every detail of his final days, building a timeline of his last known movements. Security footage showed Douglas driving home from a downtown restaurant just before 9 p.m. the night he died. He appeared calm, unaware that it would be the last time anyone would see him alive. The housekeeper who found his body said the study door had been unlocked, though Douglas usually kept it secured. His wallet was still on the desk, untouched, and only his phone and laptop were missing. That detail puzzled investigators. It didn't look like a robbery. It looked like someone had taken only what might contain secrets. When detectives analyzed Douglas's financial records, they found that 2 days before his death, he had withdrawn $15,000 in cash. There was no note about what the money was for. His accountant said Douglas rarely dealt in cash, which made the transaction suspicious. Surveillance footage from a local bank showed him carrying an envelope, leaving quickly, and looking tense. Hours later, cameras outside his property caught a figure in a red coat approaching the gate. The person's face wasn't clear, but the body type and hairstyle matched that of a young woman. The detectives couldn't ignore the resemblance to Maya Linton. They paid her a visit at her small off-campus apartment. She appeared calm and polite, insisting she had nothing to do with Douglas's death. She admitted they had been involved but said their affair had ended weeks before. According to her, she had been at a friend's apartment the night of the murder, studying for an upcoming exam. The friend, however, hesitated when questioned separately. Her version of events didn't fully align with Maya's timeline. Police began to suspect that Maya might be hiding something. Forensic testing on the broken necklace clasp found at the crime scene confirmed it belonged to a jewelry brand that Maya frequently wore, and her DNA was discovered on it. When confronted, she explained that she had visited Douglas earlier that day to collect her belongings and must have dropped it then. She swore she left him alive and well. It was a possible explanation, but the detectives couldn't overlook how much anger and heartbreak often fuel tragic outcomes. As the investigation deepened, new details emerged. One of Douglas's business partners mentioned that he had been distracted lately, talking about a young woman who might cause trouble. The partner didn't know her name but remembered Douglas saying he was trying to end things gracefully. Detectives began to piece together a picture of a man trying to cut ties and a woman unwilling to let go. Still, something about the crime felt too violent for Maya alone. There were no defensive wounds on Douglas's hands, suggesting he might have trusted his attacker enough to let them get close. It raised a chilling possibility: Maya might not have acted alone. Police were now certain that Douglas Hargrove's death involved more than a simple argument or a robbery gone wrong. The study where he was found showed no signs of forced entry, which meant the killer had either been invited in or knew how to bypass the security system. Detectives focused on the missing items: Douglas's phone and laptop. Both devices were likely to contain sensitive information about his personal and financial life. Whoever had taken them knew exactly what they were looking for. The broken necklace clasp with Maya Linton's DNA suggested her presence in the room, but forensic experts noted that the level of violence indicated someone physically capable and perhaps stronger than a young college student. A breakthrough came when Maya's phone was seized under a warrant. Investigators discovered a hidden folder containing dozens of deleted files. Among them were voice memos, screenshots, and texts exchanged between her and Douglas. The messages revealed the tension between them in the days before his death. Douglas had expressed his intention to end the affair and avoid any further meetings. One memo in particular stood out, a short recording where Douglas spoke softly about feeling trapped and wanting to cut all ties before things got worse. It painted a picture of a man who feared the consequences of their relationship but didn't anticipate the danger he was walking into. While examining Maya's digital footprint, detectives noticed unusual financial activity. Several small transactions had been made from Douglas's bank account to another account under the name Ethan Rowe. He was a 25-year-old former college acquaintance of Maya's. At first glance, Ethan seemed unrelated, but a deeper dive revealed a history of minor criminal activity and a pattern of assisting others in risky ventures. Police theorized that Maya may have recruited Ethan to intimidate Douglas, possibly to pressure him into giving her money. It was a motive consistent with someone who felt scorned, yet it also suggested a premeditated plan rather than an impulsive act. Detectives also interviewed neighbors and staff who recalled seeing a man matching Ethan's description near Douglas's property in the days before the murder. Some remembered a vehicle parked nearby that didn't belong to Douglas or any regular visitors. Others mentioned seeing Maya driving with a passenger but couldn't clearly identify him. These observations, combined with the digital and financial evidence, gave investigators a clearer picture. The murder might have involved both Maya and Ethan, and the crime was likely planned in advance. The police faced a delicate balance. They had to prove Maya's involvement beyond her presence at the house while also establishing Ethan's direct role in Douglas's death. Forensic experts re-examined the study and discovered tiny traces of DNA that did not belong to Douglas or Maya. The samples were a match for Ethan. Additionally, analysis of the blunt object used in the attack indicated it was likely wielded by someone with more physical strength than a young woman, supporting the theory that Ethan delivered the fatal blow. By piecing together the timeline, financial records, digital evidence, and forensic findings, investigators began to construct a narrative. Douglas had been lured into his study under the pretense of a discussion or reconciliation. Maya had planned the meeting, while Ethan had been instructed to confront or intimidate him. What was meant to be a threat escalated into a deadly encounter. The scene was staged to look like a robbery, but the evidence pointed to betrayal, manipulation, and a calculated plan fueled by desperation. The story was no longer about a tragic affair, it was now a case of murder orchestrated through planning, fear, and greed, shocking the quiet community of Westbrook to its core. After the forensic evidence pointed toward Ethan Rowe, investigators intensified their search for him. He had seemingly vanished in the days following Douglas Hargrove's death. Friends and acquaintances reported that he had been unusually secretive in the weeks prior, suddenly moving between apartments and avoiding social media. Police traced his movements through cell tower pings, which placed him near Douglas's neighborhood the night of the murder. This discovery, combined with the DNA evidence from the study, convinced authorities that Ethan had played a direct role in the crime. Meanwhile, Maya Linton remained in custody, her demeanor shifting as the investigation unfolded. Initially calm and cooperative, she grew increasingly defensive as detectives presented new findings. The hidden voice recordings on her phone and the deleted files showed not just a relationship but a calculated pattern of communication, highlighting that she had been aware of Douglas's unease and potentially exploited it. While she insisted she never intended harm, her involvement in arranging the meeting with Douglas was undeniable. Authorities began to view her not as the sole perpetrator but as the instigator, someone who manipulated a more physically capable accomplice to carry out a dangerous plan. The breakthrough came when police located Ethan through a pawn shop transaction. He had attempted to sell Douglas's stolen laptop and several pieces of jewelry that had been in the mansion. Surveillance footage from the shop confirmed his identity, and law enforcement quickly executed a raid on the location where he had been staying. Ethan was found attempting to erase evidence on multiple devices, but authorities recovered a number of items linking him directly to Douglas's murder. Financial records also revealed he had received transfers from Maya just days before the crime, which police interpreted as payment or reimbursement for his involvement. During interrogation, Ethan initially denied any violent actions, claiming that he had only gone to the house to teach Douglas a lesson at Maya's urging. However, confronted with the forensic findings and video evidence, he eventually admitted to striking Douglas with a heavy paperweight during a struggle. According to his account, the encounter quickly spiraled out of control. Douglas had tried to defend himself, and Ethan panicked. The blow, intended to intimidate, resulted in Douglas's death almost immediately. He and Maya then staged the scene to mimic a robbery, taking Douglas's phone and laptop to cover their tracks. The revelation of Ethan's role changed the narrative entirely. What had initially appeared to be a crime of passion between an older man and a young student was now understood as a premeditated act involving manipulation, financial greed, and calculated violence. Maya's role as the orchestrator became central to the case. The combination of her planning and Ethan's execution created a deadly partnership that neither had fully controlled. The town of Westbrook struggled to process the shocking details. Residents who had once admired Douglas for his generosity now faced the uncomfortable truth that someone so respected could become a victim of deceit and ambition. Friends and colleagues were stunned to learn that a brief affair and a moment of personal betrayal could escalate into murder. The case sparked intense debate, highlighting how fragile trust can be and how easily ambition and heartbreak can turn deadly. The story of Douglas Hargrove, Maya Linton, and Ethan Rowe became a cautionary tale of manipulation, obsession, and the devastating consequences of choices made in secrecy. With Ethan Rowe in custody, the investigation shifted focus entirely to the planning and motive behind Douglas Hargrove's murder. Prosecutors worked tirelessly to reconstruct the events leading up to that fatal night. It became clear that Maya Linton had played a pivotal role, though she had not physically struck Douglas herself. Text messages and deleted emails recovered from her devices showed that she had communicated with Ethan for weeks, instructing him to confront Douglas and make him pay for ending their relationship. The instructions were vague enough to allow plausible deniability, but detailed enough to show intent. Financial records revealed a troubling pattern. Maya had funneled money to Ethan in increments over several weeks. The transfers coincided with her messages urging him to handle Douglas. Investigators concluded that she had effectively hired Ethan to intimidate Douglas, creating a situation that escalated far beyond her expectations. In court, these transactions became central to the prosecution's case, demonstrating premeditation and conspiracy. They showed that the murder was not a spontaneous act of rage, but the result of careful planning fueled by obsession and anger. As evidence mounted, the police reconstructed the night of the murder in chilling detail. Douglas had returned home after an evening out, unaware that Maya had convinced Ethan to meet him under the pretense of retrieving her belongings. Douglas had let his guard down, never suspecting danger. When Ethan arrived, the confrontation quickly escalated. Douglas attempted to defend himself, struggling to maintain control. Panic and fear overtook reason, and Ethan struck him with a heavy object, his intended intimidation becoming a fatal blow. The scene was then manipulated to look like a robbery, with Douglas's phone and laptop taken and staged in a haphazard manner. Maya's involvement was particularly shocking to the community. Though she had not committed the physical act of murder, her role as orchestrator made her just as culpable in the eyes of the law. The evidence painted her as calculating, aware of Douglas's vulnerabilities, and willing to manipulate someone else to achieve her goals. Friends and acquaintances described her demeanor during the trial as conflicted. She alternated between appearing remorseful and maintaining a defensive posture. Public reaction was intense, with many expressing disbelief that a young college student could mastermind such a violent crime. The prosecution's case also highlighted the psychological elements of the crime. Investigators noted that Maya's actions were driven by a mix of emotional betrayal, ambition, and a desire for control. Ethan, on the other hand, appeared motivated largely by financial gain and a willingness to obey instructions without fully considering the consequences. Together, they created a dynamic that proved deadly. As the trial progressed, it became evident that Westbrook would never view the Hargrove estate or its wealthy residents the same way. The story of Douglas Hargrove's life, Maya Linton's obsession, and Ethan Rowe's complicity transformed the town's perception of safety, trust, and morality. What had begun as a brief affair escalated into a conspiracy that ended in murder, leaving the community to grapple with the horrifying reality that secrecy, manipulation, and betrayal could destroy even the most seemingly stable lives. The case became a grim example of how human emotions, when combined with opportunity and desperation, can culminate in tragedy that echoes far beyond the crime itself. Final note. The story of Douglas Hargrove's death serves as a dark reminder of how greed, obsession, and desperation can destroy lives in an instant. What began as a secret affair ended in betrayal, violence, and tragedy, leaving everyone wondering how far someone might go when love turns into revenge.